In this lecture, we will learn my top tips for refactoring Python code, aka my ultimate guide to Python refactoring. Follow these tips and you'll be coding like a pro in no time. Before submitting a code example to a potential employer, review the code and see if you can refactor it using the tips that I go over below. Create functions for repeated code. Let's say we are trying to get user input. In one while loop, we prompt the user to enter an integer. In the next, we prompt the user to enter a string. Notice that a lot of this code is repeated. In fact, everything except for the prompt is repeated. To refactor this code, we can turn it into a function. We call the function getUserInput. Since the prompt is different in both cases, we will add a parameter named prompt. Then outside of the function, we call the function and pass in the prompt asking for an integer, and then call it again and ask the user for a string. Always be on the lookout for repeated code in the programs you write, and turn it into a function that can be called in each spot that the repeated code was used. Use list comprehensions. List comprehensions are faster and simpler than for loops. Notice here that we have a list of numbers and are using a for loop to iterate over each number in the list, determine if it is even, and then add it to the even numbers list. Using a list comprehension, we can do the same exact thing in half the lines of code. The key part here is the second line, where we say number for number in numbers if number modulus 2 equals 0. This is a way to add elements to a list depending on a condition and iterating through a series of elements at the same time. List comprehensions are a very powerful feature of Python syntax. Use the ternary operator. Sometimes we want the value of a variable to depend on a certain condition present in the program. For example, if we have an x variable set to an arbitrary value, and later on in the program we want to set a string variable based on whether or not x is less than 5. Notice that the if-else solution here totals 4 lines of code, excluding the example of setting x to 3. Using the ternary operator, our solution is 1 line of code. The ternary operator is a great way to make code more concise, but just be careful about code readability. Something like this is okay, but sometimes with more complex code, an if-else statement might make it easier for others to read and understand your code. Still, the ternary operator is a powerful Python programming construct that should not be underestimated.